Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If we'd all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the commission that are here this evening. To my far right is Jamie Hine, an alternate on the commission. Next to Jamie is Jeff Cohan, a commission member. And to my immediate right is James Fitzsimmons, also a commission member. The staff table to the left of me is Cynthia Kleist, our recording secretary. And next to Cynthia is Casey Han, our town planner. I'm Jim Syke, their chairperson of the commission. Our next order of business is to approve the minutes of our June 2018 meeting. Do I have a motion or any amendments or changes to that to those minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of the June 11th meeting as submitted.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on, before we get to our various agenda items that we're going to be hearing this evening, would like to make an announcement as far as some items that will not be heard this evening. Item number 2, which was a public hearing, a special permit for one non-conforming use to another for benchmark land development at 988 East Center Street. That application has been withdrawn by the applicant. Public hearing, item number 4, special permit, fill excavation, Wallingford Industrial Improvement Company, 10 to 20 Tully's Road. That application has been withdrawn by the applicant. Public hearings number 5, special permit, warehouse office, Wallingford Industrial Improvement Company, 10 to 20 Tully's Road. That application has also been withdrawn by the applicant. Number 6, which is old business, a site plan for Paradise Hills Vineyard at 15 Windswept Road. No action is requested on that as they are still waiting, I believe, for a determination from our Inland Wetlands Commission. And the final item is new business. It's a subdivision, 1 lot, Wallingford Industrial Company, 528 South Cherry Street. New lot to be known as 1020 Tully's Road. On that one, there's no action requested on that particular application by the applicant. And that'll bring us now to our first item that is on the agenda, which is a continuation of a public hearing, special permit location of use for Scrubbing Bubbles 3 at 448 South Colony Street. If the applicant and or his representative would please come forward to begin preparing for their presentation. And Mr. Fitzsimmons, if you would please note any additional information for the record.
We received a memo from the Fire Marshal's office dated July 3rd, 2018, and we also received a copy of an email sent by Eric Kruger, Senior Engineer for the Wallingford Water and Sewer Division, dated July 9th, addressed to the town planner. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Do you have a copy of the second memo that Mr. Fitzsimmons referred to from Eric Kruger?
I have no copy.
Okay, if you...
I'm sorry.
No, it's
I'm gonna go get that.
not for you to be sorry. We didn't provide it to you. There you go.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's going to be modified a wee bit anyway.
Okay. If you would just please state your name for the record and begin the continuation of your presentation.
My name is Naresh Kamal.
Sir, if you could please just pull that a little bit closer to you.
My name is Naresh Kamal from North Haven, Connecticut.
My name is Adrian Feiser. I'm also from North Haven, Connecticut. As I explained last time, I'm not an engineer and I'm not a lawyer. I'm working on this project with Mark.
Okay. Well, if you just continue your presentation on the application.
Okay, I think we've tried to take all your concerns and suggestions from the last month's meeting and act upon them on our latest site plan, which is the 4th revised edition. We've rectified the front display area, which was a trouble to all the members, I think, with the odd curve of the driveway. And we've made it so that they will be parallel to North Colony Street rather than the previous, following the curves of the existing driveway. We're going to cut the island and replace the curbing as shown. Some of the members, commission members, were concerned about the 3 employee parking spaces along the south sideline. I think they believed it created a hazard for the lack of driving space between the building and the spaces. So we've eliminated 2 of those from that area and put the 2 in the rear parking area way back where the overflow parking and dumpster are. You'll see number 2 and 3, those are employee spaces. We made a notation on the plot plan regarding distances from the street for the existing sign, but apparently it should have been from the front of the property or the property line to the new curbing, and also for the vehicle display. Those 2 numbers apparently, according to Casey, should have been not from the street but from the edge. So we would ask that you could make that a condition, if you were to approve it, that each of those is in compliance, such as the sign within 10 feet, and our new curbing we put in there is 25 feet at least. We also made a notation on the plan for a 12 to 18 inch small fence on both sides of the entrance to prevent us from, or anyone from, driving cars for sale and mounting the curb and making for a better display but illegal operation. We've also agreed with you that there will be no junk cars and no outside storage other than vehicles awaiting sales or service. We're hoping that the latest site plan will put to rest some of your concerns, and we think we've integrated all the items from the various board members' concerns and suggestions at last month's meeting, as well as suggestions from Casey. I'd like to make the note, there's absolutely no negative comment from or input from any town resident or neighbor, as you've seen. Finally, we trust that a change of use from a 24-hour car wash to an auto repair facility with accessorial used car sales will be granted. It's a perfectly suitable addition for the town and the area. Thank you for your time. But now, before I finish, he's come with a curveball, because last month, as in this letter, we were going to close both the car wash bays. He's now thinking or hoping that one remain open and the other be the repair. I don't know what that does to the mix. Possible, not possible, start all over, more chaos. I thought we were done.
Mrs. Hand, would you like to comment on that? Does that change the whole application?
Well, I guess that's at the commission's discretion in terms of what you think the impact is, but it seems to me that having a car wash bay there may have some impact in how the circulation would work. It kind of busies up the site, so I don't know if the commission might feel differently about that. I mean, like I said, I think it busies up the site to some degree, and that's the concern that I would have, is how those vehicles that are moving through the car wash are interacting with vehicles that may or may not be parked or waiting to get repaired, and how those, if you have vehicles lining up for the car wash, we don't have a queue for the car wash anymore.
Yep.
So I think we might look for some modifications to the plan if you wanted to do it that way, and to give the commission a little more time to think about it, and me a little more time to think about it.
Yeah, I would agree with our town planner. I think, as you mentioned at the first meeting, that this is a relatively small site, and you have a lot that's going on with this site just for a used car repair activity. Now you're looking to say, I want that in addition. Now I want to have the car wash bay. You know, in my mind, I don't think that that's really compatible. And certainly if it's your option to, you know, to present whatever you would like to present. But I think if you were to come, if you were to say, now I want the car wash as well as the repair and sales, I think we're talking about a whole new plan, because the whole, you know, the circulation becomes totally different. There's more activity on the property now. Other commission members, how they may feel about it? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
I just was noting in the minutes of the June 11th meeting last month that it was stated on the record that the State Motor Vehicle Department requires 2 bays for repairer's license. I
misspoke, I'm sorry.
Okay.
It requires 2 vehicles to be repaired simultaneously. I have a copy of that here. So it's not really the 2 bays, it's the simultaneous 2 cars in the 44-foot bay could be done.
Okay.
My apology.
No.
Sorry, go ahead. What's the difference between having 2, I mean, are you having 2 workstations in one of the bays?
That would be,
Because
that would be the only other option, to have 2 cars, one in front of the other, inside the one bay, and thus not putting one in each bay.
Okay, because that again would, I think, again, you're kind of busying things up.
Yeah. You want to keep money in the water?
If I might, thank you. I would agree, because that would have been my question. I mean, we currently have on the west side a car wash with a bay used for repair, and that's quite a busy site with lots of vehicles waiting to be repaired. And I would echo the chairman. It makes it very busy. So this is a much more compact site. So I too would propose you come back if the plan is to continue use of the bay for car wash. And if you could, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with that. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that facility on Hartford Turnpike over by the Oakdale, but it is.
Where's his?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, it's you know, so you understand then. So, preaching to the choir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Mr. Cohen.
Yes, I would agree with the chairman and Mr. Fitzsimmons, but just so I understand, you are stating that you are still thinking about using this as a commercial bay for car washing?
Right.
Okay. All right, then, yes, I would agree with the other commissioners.
Mr. Hine.
Just a quick question. As you sit here today, do you have any sense as to which bay you would leave for car washes? Would it be the south side or the north side bay?
Outside.
South side.
Far end would be my guess, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any other commission members? Casey, any comments before I go out to the public?
Just to Mr. Cohen's question, I guess I would, the one sort of caveat I would say is that if the proposal were to just use the wash bay for the repairer and not to be open to the general public, that would probably be okay. That probably wouldn't have a significant impact, but I think that's not what you're talking about. Right, is that correct? Yeah, okay.
All right, just one, I guess a couple of comments that I have. You know, I appreciate the fact that the change that you've made on the, you know, on the plans, you've reconfigured the front. You know, frankly, I'd rather see 4 cars instead of 6 cars, but I'm not going to quibble about that. I suspect other commission members do not have an issue with that. But the one issue that I still have is just that one employee parking space that's on the, I guess it's the south side of the property.
Yeah.
You know, on that one, to me, that space still seems that's just out of place.
That is no problem. That can be moved in a second.
Yeah. Well, I think as far as being moved, I think just eliminate it, because I'm not sure where else that you would put that.
It does, if it bothers you there, it can be moved.
Or it can be removed.
Yeah, I put a number 1 over here and 1, 2, 3 in the overflow there. We have plenty of options for employees to park.
Yeah, okay, so just so we're clear, that space, at least I'm proposing that simply be removed.
Removed.
So just, and one final thing, just so I'm clear, as far as the 2 bays, is the request to have 1 bay for repair, 1 bay for a car wash, or is the request to have 2 bays, both for repair?
Or I guess the alternative would be to ask to continue for another month if you'd like the opportunity to
Yeah, I guess if you,
address that.
yeah, I guess, or if you'd like the opportunity to address that, I will say, I think it's pretty clear to see from the commission standpoint that if your request is to have one of those bays as a car wash, the chances of that being approved by the commission, I think, are very remote, although I don't want to speak for all of the other commission members, but judging from the comments. So I guess at this point in time, there's, 2 options. We have an application before us, and initially the application was for 2 repair bays. If you would like to, consider modifying your application for a repair bay and a car wash, you can certainly do that, and we can continue the meeting. So it's clearly up to you.
He said it's extremely remote. I don't do well with remote odds.
Especially extreme with one.
If we were to let you make a judgment on what we've already submitted to you, what becomes involved if we want to come back and a totally separate deal and not have the 2 bays? Is that a really chaos situation?
I don't think it's a chaos. Mr. Sand, correct me if I'm wrong, we approve an application, your application's been approved. If someone comes back to modify that application, they can come back with a plan to modify the application.
Okay.
It's a new, it's a new application.
And I'm not familiar with this as well, but if we were to, I would allow you to make a judgment tonight on this, and then we can come next month if you wanted to try for a bay with different plan.
Well, not if we wanted to, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Again, I can only say, I think, you've heard the comments from the commission,
I have.
but it is clearly, you and this gentleman's, option to, proceed with, with something else or with a modification.
And just to clarify, if they act,
I would like to keep the car wash for 1 day if possible. No, I heard that.
You can get a approval tonight or disapproval of this, at least we can get some sort of judgment on this. And if you want the car bay, you can come back, is that correct, Casey?
I can always.
if they act,
Or I don't know who I'm talking to, you maybe. We can come back and modify this plan if it's approved tonight, for example. We can come back and try for something else if necessary for the bay.
Sure.
you can, but it wouldn't be next month. It would be a new application. You'd start the process all over.
You start the whole process over again.
Okay. Is that better? Yeah. I think we're in good shape. At least I feel a good vibe with what we gave. I tried to do what you asked for and tried.
Don, I appreciate
And
that.
then tonight, he had a thought that I guess he's had before, and it's a good thought, but it's if you don't like the idea, then we're not gonna.
Yeah, again, I think.
We're not gonna fight.
Yeah, I think what the
we
commission is,
should take
what
what
we
we can
said,
get tonight.
you have a relatively small site.
Yeah.
As you said at the last meeting, there's a lot of activity and you're trying to put a lot onto this site.
Yeah.
The car wash only puts more onto this site. So, this is a public hearing. Are there any members from the public that would like to speak on the application? Seeing none, I would bring it back to the commission for any final comments that people would like to make. Yes, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Just to be clear, I realize this is it. There's nobody else here. So I don't want to jinx anything. As I'm listening to this, here's my concern, because it's changed from month to month. My understanding is your application is for a special permit. So that,
The state-
in my opinion, that's a big deal application. It's not a small, so the idea that we're sitting here saying, well, maybe we could do this and maybe we could do that. My preference would be that we're acting on what you're asking for this evening. So knowing that you need a special permit approval to go to the state,
That's correct.
and then you might want to come back and make a change, causes me to pause.
Okay.
Because, Mike, I understand and I respect and appreciate it's your right, it's your
Yeah.
application, but understand our approval, the special permit, is what you need to get to the state for the repairs license. To then change it, I don't know, and I would have to defer to the town planner, what happens at the state level. Because, again, I'm not the state, okay? But our book, our regulations are quite clear.
Yeah.
And people do occasionally modify a special permit approval. Your special permit potential approval is contingent, you need it to get the license. So
That's
once you get your license, the question I would be through you, Mr. Chairman, is ask the town planner, if a special permit is revised for this based upon the commentary they offered, do we have any notification to the state, or is the state out because they got their approval?
Well, the state, the approval for the state, I sign the plan as well as the paperwork. So, whatever plan I sign, that's what for the state, that's what they're agreeing to do. So then if you get your state permit and then you want to change something, that means the state will also require a new plan and a new permit.
Okay. I just want to make sure this is all on the record, because I respect everyone, you're right as a business owner, landowner, I'm uncomfortable, but now that I know that that's what would have to happen, if your request is for us to act on what you're requesting this evening,
That's absolutely.
then I have nothing further to say.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Again, I just like to at least reiterate what I'd like to see on the plans. Again, I'd like to see that one space, eliminated. It's on the south side.
Okay,
I know you've indicated the fence is 12 to 18 inches. Let's take the 12 off and just have 18. So we're clear
No
on.
problem.
So we're clear on that.
I might put a split rail there.
Yeah, and also I'd like to see before, a permit is issued, that all of the parking spaces, including the car display, that all of that be lined. So we have all of these lined before, this business is open for business. And then also, as far as the number of cars, believe you have Casey, there's 20, Mrs. Hanrather, there's 21 spaces, and if we eliminate one, we're down to 20 spaces, is that correct?
Yes.
I have,
Actually, I was missing
10,
one.
20, 32, 35, 41, including the front. Well, it's 21 without the back storage spaces.
So but is it 21 after we eliminate the one
Then-
part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
He is right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You sure?
No, 20, you're right.
It's 20.
So there'd be 20 formal parking spaces, the storage area in the back.
6, 7. Okay, so we have 20 parking spaces, there's 20 storage spaces. So that's a maximum then of 40. So that's the total number of vehicles that you could have
Yeah.
on the
On the property.
on the property. And I just have one other question. I'm looking at this because it is a auto repair now. If someone brings their vehicle in, are they able to enter the building from the rear? Because that seems like that's all storage, or they'd have to walk around the building in order to get to the front where the sales office is and the lobby and waiting area?
Well, you're gonna turn at the first arrow. You go alongside the building, you turn at the first arrow. And then, yes, you can park to the back of the building where it says 1 or 2, or you can use any of the.
No, I see that, but then someone, when they get out of their vehicle, they have to walk then
They
from
have
the
to
back,
walk.
they have to walk from the back to the front of the building, because there's not an entrance in the rear of the building to get to.
I think we will make one. There is one back there. Isn't there a rear entrance?
Through the storage area?
Yeah, well, we could make a hallway through to the front perhaps.
That may, that may be, may be appropriate.
Yeah, I think you
Get
don't
your
like them
decision.
walking in the driveway. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, if there's no further comments from commission members or, yes, Mrs. Han.
Sorry, just a couple conditions of approval and a clarification that the applicant alluded to. So because the measurement for the sign in the front landscaped area are off the curb line instead of the front property line, just as a condition of approval, final plans should reflect that the front parking area is to be at least 25 feet back from the front property line. There's plenty of room to do it. I mean, they might have to tweak it a tiny bit, but there's plenty of room to do it. And then same thing with, and that the sign is at least 10 feet back, which it is. And then just a clarification for the fence up front, what is that going to, what kind of fence is that going to be?
I have absolutely no idea, but but it'll be 18 inches high and nice looking. At least. It could be split rail. I mean, it's something that would just be sure to deter any of.
Well, I don't think we want a split rail fence. I think perhaps, Mrs. Han, you could work with the applicant and come up
Yeah,
with something that would be appropriate, other than a split rail fence.
Okay, all right. Okay. Is the commission looking for something that's not see-through? Does it matter?
I guess I was the one that talked about the fence. I think it would be much better to have something that in fact is see-through.
Okay.
So
You know,
like
something, they have those, not necessarily write iron, but the metal that are the
Sure.
spindles or something.
Okay.
I mean, something
All
like
right,
that.
got it.
And
Okay,
I just, so it creates a barrier, so there's not the
Yeah.
possibility of parking up on a landscaping, but I certainly wouldn't want to block the view of the vehicles.
okay. And then, so we'll have clarification regarding the fence, the front setback of the 25 feet, the elimination of the one parallel space, the creation of an entry from the back of the building, and those two spaces are customer parking spaces, is that right? Those two right in the back?
The back of the building, correct.
The two
Yeah,
right
yes.
behind the building?
Yes.
Okay. And then last thing is the condition of approval from water and sewer that was submitted today.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Which spot is going away?
This one.
All right. Okay. It's the only one labeled. Okay.
Yeah. And if there's no other comments from commission members or from the applicant, at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? And at this particular point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission approve a special permit, location of use for Scrub and Bubble 3, to allow an automotive dealer and repairer at 448 North Colony Street, as shown on plans entitled 448 North Colony Street, M45 B004 L103, Wallingford, Connecticut, site plan dated March 12th, 2018, revised to June 29th, 2018, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, representations and clarifications in letter from applicant dated July 2018 to be reflected on the final map. Number 2, comments of the Town of Wallingford Water and Sewer Senior Engineer dated April 4th, 2018 and July 9th, 2018. Number 3, comments of the Town of Wallingford Town Engineer dated 4/6/2018. Number 4, comments of the Town of Wallingford Town Planner dated 4/5/2018. Number 5, comments of the Town of Wallingford Fire Marshal's Office dated 7/6/2018. Number 6, applicant is not allowed to display any vehicles for sale on any landscaped area or along Route 5, and the outside the building should not be used for outside storage of either car parts or junk vehicles. Number 6, applicant should secure sign-off on a permit from the Connecticut DOT. Number 7, applicant should provide An addition of a fence as discussed at the meeting in consultation with the town planner, at least 18 inches high to create a barrier between the landscaping and the vehicles for display. Number 8. The maximum number of vehicles to be displayed for sale and the maximum number of vehicles to be shown to be stored on site to be limited to the 40 parking spaces as outlined on the plans and discussed at this evening's meeting. Number 9, final plans to reflect a front parking area 25 feet back from the property line, and the applicant's sign should be properly located 10 feet back from the same property line. Number 10, the applicant should eliminate parking space labeled number 1 on the plans as discussed this evening. Number 10, the applicant should create a rear entry for customer access. And finally, I think I'm up to number 11. The applicant should the applicant is limited for parking display and storage of vehicles to be limited only to the areas shown on the final approved plan.
You also add, all the parking spaces lined.
Oh, right, thank you. And number 12, prior to issuance of sign-off for the DMV, applicant's full lot should be lined for all parking spaces with paint.
Thank you. We have a motion for the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, beginning voting with Mr. Hine.
A yes to approve?
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, your application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, all of you. I'm glad there's no audience for my performance. Good night, and thanks.
Okay, moving on. Our next item is a public hearing. It's a zoning regulation amendment, modifies section 6.9.G, LED electronic sign to extend moratorium an additional 6 months to February 27th, 2019, to allow additional time for consideration for new regulations by the commission. And Mr. Fitzsimmons, if you would please read the legal notice.
Sure. The Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold the following public hearing at their meeting of Monday, July 9th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Robert F. Parisi Council Chambers of Town Hall, 45 South Main Street. Application number 903-18, zoning text amendment to modify section 6.9.G of the Wallingford zoning regulations to extend the moratorium on LED/electronic signs for 6 months to February 17th, 2019, to allow additional time for consideration of new regulations by the Commission. And we did receive one piece of correspondence on this dated Monday, July. Oh, never mind. Strike that. We received interdepartment correspondence on this dated June 14th, 2018. I believe that's it.
If you just note all the ones that
The 3B, are those all internal? Those aren't correspondence. We have attachments from the Planning and Zoning Office labeled 3B, 3C, 3D, 3E, which are all background information related to regulating digital signs and billboards, and they were supplied by the Office of the Town Planner.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. And Mrs. Hand, if you would please take over with respect to this application.
Sure. So, as the commission is well aware at this point, we originally in February of 2017 enacted a moratorium for electronic message or electronic signage. Just to clarify, there are different, we've talked about this a little bit in the past, there's different terminology used. So LED bulbs are not included in this. So if an LED bulb is used as internal lighting for a sign, that is acceptable. That's not included in this moratorium, but this is for digital signage, also known as electronic message boards. And the reason is that we were starting to see some of these pop up in town, and that we don't have specific regulations to address them. What we do have on the books now is that signs can't be moving or flashing or blinking or things of that nature. And so the restriction has always been that or under that regulation is that the signs can change. They can sit and have a message, and then that message can change. But we were running into, there was one sign in particular that's very, very bright that's in town, and it generated a lot of complaints and concerns. And I think the commission had some broader concerns about, as these become more popular, wanting to really talk about whether they're appropriate in town, what kind of safety concerns they might present, what kinds of public welfare concerns they might present, and whether or not and to what extent they should be regulated. So you enacted a moratorium. We've had some other things that have taken precedence. Our town center regulations have been a big one, and then you've had a couple of big applications that have popped up. So we haven't had a time to, we did have, I think, 2 workshops about this, but we really haven't had time to fully, or been able to fully invest the time to move forward with something yet. So this is an application. The current moratorium will expire in August. This is an application to extend the moratorium for another 6 months. I have started working on a potential regulation. I did also reach out to, it's actually interesting, I reached out to I'm on a planners listserv, it's planners in Connecticut, and we kind of talk about things that come up. And I asked about what some of the other towns do, and I got very sparse response, which is unusual. So it seems Meriden recently enacted a regulation for digital billboards, which their town planner their city planner did share with me. And I believe it was Manchester has a regulation where they allow digital signs in bigger multi-tenant developments, and they're limited in size, and I provided those for you last time, and those were really the only 2 responses I got. It seems that a lot of municipalities are kind of in the same position we are, where they have the moving sign regulations, and so some of them seem to say that means that they're allowed if the sign doesn't flash or blink or so on and so forth. Some of them seem to interpret that to mean that they're not allowed. So it's an interesting issue, and interestingly, the state legislature recently passed legislation indicating that zoning commissions can, in fact, regulate the brightness of the signs themselves, which I think a lot of us had sort of presumed was already within your jurisdiction, but now it's caught up, now it's more explicitly within your jurisdiction, I suppose. So I will find out a little more about the history of that. But anyhow, now it's clear, yes, we can regulate brightness. So right now, what's before you is an extension of the moratorium. I will say there have been some inquiries over the last several months, so there is some interest, and I think we had talked about the possibility of regulating these. So like I said, I am working on a regulation to have for you. And I think we want to think hard about how far we want to, I think it's wise to err in the direction of being cautious as we move forward with these. So what I'm planning to do is give you a couple different sort of options built into the regulation.
When do you think you may have those available for us? Because before we schedule, at least my feeling would be before we schedule a workshop on this, because if you mentioned we've had a workshop or 2 on this already, so before we schedule another one, it would be certainly very helpful to have something for commission members to look at. So when we schedule the workshop, we can have certainly a very good discussion and look at some, some very, hard recommendations.
Yeah, I would say I will be able to wrap those up within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, so that may be something that you perhaps be able to present to us in our packets for our August meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Commission members with comments? Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions. This will be our second moratorium. How far can we carry the moratorium out legally?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know that there is a precise answer. I mean, I think at some point it would, if we were going to keep having moratoriums, it would be in the commission's interest to just say we're just not allowing them. But I don't know that there's a specific restriction on how long it can go.
And the second question I have is, we do have a few of these signs already, and I'm just wondering because, they were erected before we had any regulations, and, so I'm thinking, yeah, there's signs, but they're, different signs. Do we have any recourse on, the existing signs?
No, they're grandfathered in under the current regulation. Even the new legislation grandfathers the existing brightness of existing LEDs. So no, those will have to follow the reg they came in under. Or if we did develop new regs and they wanted to kind of claim those, they'd have to follow all of the rules of those. So under the current reg, they shouldn't be there. There is one I saw today, actually, that scrolls and it's not supposed to. So they are just supposed to be a message that sits and then change. But yeah, they can stay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And if someone who has an existing sign wanted to change that sign, then they would need to fall under if we come up with regulations, they would then have to fall under those regulations, correct? I mean, they can keep what they have, but if there's looking to put a new sign or, I guess, to modify the sign, there could be an issue with that where they'd have to conform with, if we do come up with some regulations. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, and again, I think I share Mr. Cohan's feeling. This is another extension of this moratorium, and I would certainly hope and fully expect that come February that we're in a position, or prior to February, that we're in a position to make a decision. Either one, we come out with some regulations with respect to these signs, or make a decision that we don't want these types of signs. So I think it's going to be on us and I guess on me to make sure that that happens. Other commission members? Mrs. Hand, would you like to make any further comments before I ask for a motion? Again, this is a public hearing. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on the application? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for any final comments commission members would make. If there are none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I move we close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and I'll entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, based upon the totality of the record, I move that a zoning regulation amendment for section 6.9.g for the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission to be adopted to extend the previously approved moratorium on the issuance allowance of LED or electronic signage for a second time and by an additional 6 months, such that the moratorium shall be extended to February 17th, 2019, in order to allow the Commission additional time to pursue appropriate regulation of such signage as proposed in the subject application, because the town staff and commission need additional time to develop and fine-tune new regulations as pertains to the opportunity to pursue appropriate regulation of such signage and to explore the allowance and appropriateness of the regulations of such signs, subject to the moratorium extension is to be effective upon the expiration date, August 17th, 2018, of the existing moratorium extension.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Cohan, voting beginning with Mr. Hine.
Yes to approve.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Thank you, Casey. And if you would, rather, thank you, Mrs. Hand. If you would please now continue with our next items being bond releases and reductions.
Yes, item number 8, 605 North Elm Street is not ready for release. Item number 9, 701 North Colony Road is ready for release, subject to approval from the engineering department. So I don't know if you want to wait a month or approve it subject to that sign off.
Commission members, your choice. Either wait a month or make it subject to sign off by the engineering department.
Sign off by the engineering department.
I think the general sense is that we'll approve it subject to the sign off from the engineering department. So I guess I'd entertain a motion on that.
Mr. Chairman, I move the commission to approve a bond release of the remaining bond for Kingsbrook Development Site Plan 701 North Colony Road as requested in a letter dated June 25th, 2018, with a condition that prior to release, the appropriate sign-off be obtained from the Town of Wallingford Engineering Department.
Do we have a motion on the request? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, and moving on to reports of officers and staff.
Okay, administrative approvals, I will leave it to you whether or not you have any questions. There were several administrative approvals granted this month.
Anyone, any questions on administrative approvals?
Nope.
Seeing none, if you would please continue.
Okay, ZBA decision of June 18th. This was an application that was denied for an addition, a significant addition and expansion to a home at 4 Doris Street. Any questions about that?
Anyone with any questions? Seeing none?
The only one I would, so for upcoming ZBA applications, there are, I guess, 2 I will point out to you. Actually 3. Item number 3 is a similar somewhat similar application at 12 Russell Street, also for an addition to a house. And the reason I point it out is because there are several variances involved. So I just wanted to point it out to you, see if you wanted to make any comment on that. And then the other 2 are items number 5, which is a variance request for dumpster, refuse, and recycling containers to be located in the front yard at 101 North Plains Industrial Road. The buildings are oriented sort of oddly, and it's sort of an odd piece of property the way it orients to the road, but they have located several dumpsters out what is sort of the back of the buildings, but is sort of their front yard in some ways. So they have applied for variances to allow the dumpsters to be located in that location. And I know that had come up, so I just wanted to point that out in case anyone had any questions or comments.
Any questions or comments from commission members on that? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did make a note of that, and I have a note. I hand wrote a note on the zoning complaint log regarding dumpsters. I just have. I don't know if it's just because I've been in various parts of town. I was sharing with Mr. Cohen. I'm teaching my son, taking him to driver's ed, so we're driving all around to parts of town, and it's nice when you're not driving and you're the passenger. I am noticing more and more dumpsters that are not screened. These dumpsters are, as I would consider it, to be the front lawn. I understand and agree it's a unique building situation. But if Walmart, because that way that building orientates the road, doesn't have frontage, if they were to put their dumpsters on the side, I suspect we'd have a problem with that. So, I don't want to signal out this person because they got a zoning violation and they're doing the proper thing, which is to request a variance, or, so I don't, but in this particular topic, I would invite any of the commissioners or anyone in town, you are seeing more dumpsters where they don't belong. I had the opportunity to visit a business on Center Street on Friday. So I parked behind the upper lot of Center Street. Normally I don't, and the back parking lot, I counted no fewer than 7 dumpsters. And they're all taking up parking spots. They're not screened. So screening would be the primary issue for me. In this particular instance, it's location. But I guess if they were screened, it wouldn't be as offensive to me. And I know as this topic comes up and someone says, well, how can that be? I know we don't generally like dumpsters to be in the front. We want them to be shown on the plans. So I would be in favor of the zoning enforcement officer continue to cite dumpster violations, so to speak, because it's not going away. It's actually getting worse. Yeah. And these just happen to, when you go on North Plains Highway, it's a nice wide road for a new driver. You happen to notice that I'm like, wow, they're on the front lawn, and then you go further down. This is not the only business on this highway that has the dumpsters in the front. And so I don't have an official comment. I am not suggesting we comment on this but I want to watch this to see what happens with ZBA, because if they get approved, you would expect more of this. And I'm not sure what the hardship is on a variance for a dumpster location on a front lawn versus the rear of the property. So.
I would just like to agree with Mr. Fitzsimmons. I certainly have, and I think most people driving through towns, you just see in some properties where the dumpsters are, in some cases, in a lot of cases, they're not screened. They're in parking spaces, and even if they're in parking spaces, some of them are just very helter-skelter. It's not, on some properties, they're not very well organized. Other people do a very nice job, but I do agree. I think it's an issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I will say a lot of not all, certainly not this one, but some of the properties, now, as you all know, we pay attention, and when we get applications for new buildings or changes, we make sure the dumpster has a spot. That wasn't always the case, so a lot of these are grandfathered in, or they never really had they don't really have a home per se, the dumpsters. I will certainly pass that along to our zoning enforcement officer. She's got a lot on her plate. So so if you see them and you pass them along to us too, because we can't be everywhere all the time, and it's helpful to have input from other people, but I will certainly pass that along to her, that we've been doing another round of she's been doing another round of pursuing some sign violations, so we have a couple other things to do rounds of, and maybe we can add a round of dumpster violation of dumpster pursuit.
Thank you. I believe Mr. Fitzsimmons, you had a further comment?
Yeah, forgive me. I don't often disagree with the town planner. I would never use the term grandfathered with a dumpster, because most dumpsters are on wheels, or and they can be moved because they're emptied weekly or month. So the fact it's sitting where it shouldn't be, even though there was no place, I wouldn't agree with the fact that it was grandfathered. If we change the regs, or and I understand an existing usage, but I think if we have an issue where the dumpster is located in a parking spot,
That I would agree with.
Yeah, so I just, this is not grandfathering a shed or someone's pool or whatever. This is a dumpster, which, they could change if they change dumpster removal companies. So I don't like that term, because it's not a structure. This could be removed, right? But I
don't
understand
think
zoning
we have-
enforcement. Yeah, I understand zoning enforcement. I wouldn't use the term that the dumpster is grandfathered because it's always been there. If it's always been in a parking spot and it's an issue, and, you know, I understand your office acts on zoning complaints, but I understand how some things are, so.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. And Mrs. Han, if you'd like to continue.
Okay, so, and then the last one I wanted to point out was, number 6, which is a variance for 65 South Colony Street. I think we discussed that, property a little bit at the last planning and zoning meeting because of some violations there. We have had a lot of progress, since then with that particular property. One of the Southern Connecticut Wine Company, which was perhaps generating the greatest parking problem over there, has relocated their public component, their events and all of those things that weren't supposed to be occurring there, and some that were, to a location in another town. So now it will just, what's been represented to us is that she's just going to be doing her actual production there. So hopefully that will go a long way to address some of this. The outdoor patio area in the back that had been created has been removed, but the fitness center that is located there, they have opted to apply for a variance as their method of sort of addressing their issue. Their issue is they were grandfathered for a certain number of spaces, sort of, to claim a certain number of non-existent spaces. So they were limited. When the approval was granted, she wasn't the applicant, but when the approval was granted for that use, it was based on limiting the clients to a specific number of clients. The business operates with a larger number of clients, so that business owner is seeking a variance to allow the larger number of clients for limited days and times.
Thank you. Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, I do have one question because, you know, on the wine club, and I did happen to attend, well, I went there and went inside for the first time, and, you know, a real nice place. And the fact that, you know, we have a kind of a unique little business that, you know, has to move part of it from Wallingford is a little disconcerting. So, you know, kind of I don't know if it's a rhetorical question, but, you know, is there anything we could have done to help in that regard?
You know, I completely understand where you're coming from, and we were talking about that when we were going through this process with all of the businesses that are located in that building, which is they each of them, when they located there, went through a process where it was made very, very clear. I mean, the wine club went through variances to allow their 12 events per year, and under a different operator, they had some violations in the beginning. So it shouldn't have been a surprise. It wasn't a surprise. I mean, when I talked to the owner, she knew that there were issues, and basically, I think with that location, it's kind of served as a nice startup spot or kind of incubator spot for those businesses. The issue is there's so little parking there that there's no room for them to expand. So it's a good thing, and it's a great thing that they have been successful and that they've grown. I think ideally, maybe they would have been able to grow into another location in Wallingford, or, you know, even another location. But that was it. She actually, from what I understand, the wine company already had this other location set up, and I'm not sure what her plans were in terms of if she had been planning on keeping more of the operation in Wallingford to begin with or not. So it kind of worked out for her that she had this other location that had been approved a few months previously. But yeah, I mean, it is unfortunate that, it's always nice to see businesses succeed, and we want to be able to help them. It's just that they outgrew the location. And I don't know beyond that really. I mean, what we hope is that they can find another location that suits them in Wallingford. And certainly we try to make resources available to them. If people ask questions like that, I always direct them to our economic development specialist if they're looking for new locations. But I don't think there's anything, there is no way there. It doesn't seem to me that there's a way to accommodate them there. There hasn't been anything I've been able to come up with anyhow, without them intruding on and hurting other businesses.
Thanks for that, Casey. I pretty much agree. I think the just little sticking point that I had was, there was some signage saying, you can't park here, but I don't think we, or maybe the owner, had enough visibility to have some signage to say, hey, listen, there's plenty of parking across the street. I mean, there were just signs saying, hey, you can't park here. And, I don't know if we could have done that better, but thanks for your answer. I just wanted to ask.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Hine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that struck me about that particular situation was that it seemed as though you had the public parking that was sort of across the street. And to me, that was the exact type of situation that we're looking to sort of promote a little bit with these new regulations, is to allow businesses to promote businesses, particularly down in that area, in that lower downtown area. And here you have a business that seems to be thriving a little bit, and you have the public parking right across the street that we're trying to encourage businesses to take advantage of. And instead, it seems as though our regulations did the exact opposite in this particular instance, where even though the public parking was available, the business is basically being forced out. And here we have a business that was growing in the area that we want businesses to grow in. And the result is the business is leaving, despite the fact that there's at least public parking in that area that could have been taken advantage of.
Generally, well, a couple things. That particular property is not located in the town center zone, and it's not in the proposed town center zone. And part of the reason for that is because the parking, the people are seem to be unwilling to access the public parking that is available. So there's parking on Prince Street across South Colony, there's parking on South Colony, and there's the parking on Quinnipiac. People have thus far been unwilling to walk the distance necessary to cross one of those streets. And to cross South Colony, you have to be willing to walk up to the crosswalk to cross and walk back. I don't think that's a big deal. But because there's sort of the access diminishes as you go down South Colony to that property. That's why that property and the one directly to the north of it are not included in the town center zoning. To your point, when the variance was granted for the wine company to allow its events, that was the part of the conversation that was had and the representation was made was, well, there's other public parking. And I think this sort of, to me, demonstrates the concern that I have about when people talk about going to zero parking, is because you run the risk of ending up with one property that completely maxes out and uses up kind of parking for everybody else. So I think that's one issue. The other issue there was those tenants and that property didn't do a good enough job of telling its clients. What ended up happening is all of their clients were parking on the private parking lot 2 properties up. And they were costing that property, I mean, that property owner is very, very upset and tried a lot of different things, and we tried a lot of, we tried to get those tenants, we tried to get those tenants, you have to tell your clients they can't park on other people's private property. And so it was, but they were unwilling to do that, and they were costing there were some significant issues created for that property, and I won't get into the details, but there were tenants lost for that other building because of the parking that was being used up by somebody else. So that was really the issue. I agree with you. I think if it had been well communicated sort of from the beginning to both of your points, park here or here or here, but not here, and it had been well policed by those business owners, it might have been a preventable problem, but it wasn't. So it got to the point where we had, where there were zoning violations that we had to pursue. So
Just to be clear, I'm sympathetic to the
Yeah.
property owner as
Yeah.
well.
but it's a shame to lose those other businesses, absolutely.
Yeah, and I sort of wonder whether, from our standpoint, and maybe there's nothing we can do from our standpoint, but if there's something that we as a commission can do to prevent something like that, I just hate to see a successful business leaving that area. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fitzsimmons, one final comment on this subject.
If I could opine, I would agree with the first 2 speakers, and it reminds me, I've said repeatedly, downtown parking is a good problem to have because it means you got a good downtown. I fully agree with both of you, having been to the wine club and supporting the businesses down there. To me, it reiterates the conversation we've had, because I remain concerned about the variances that have been granted as it pertains to parking. I would tell you, I think of 2 sites. One of them, it's going to happen sooner than later, is a restaurant on Route 5, which was granted a parking variance. They have very limited on-site parking. We just approved a rather large retail store that is being constructed, and I'm telling you, it's going to come to a head when that store opens, and I feel bad for everyone involved. However, this commission didn't create that problem. So I would, and I feel, I think there's something that, I'll probably go to the new store and I go to the restaurant, and it's difficult. So the ZBA has their job and we have our job. So I would repeat my request to the chairman, and I know we're going to talk calendar in a moment. I do think it's time for us to have a joint meeting again with the ZBA. We haven't done one in a number of years. They should know how we feel, because I do think a parking variance, and again, sometimes things happen. The restaurant I'm talking about in Route 5 was a breakfast only place. It's now open breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And the empty lot next door where everyone used to park is now going to become a new Tractor Supply company. So you can see what's going to happen. We Jamie, you and I were out at that site together looking at it, and there's no parking at that restaurant. They were relying on side streets and the empty lot, which is now going to be a developed lot. So it's the vision thing. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, if I could, when we're talking scheduling, if maybe we could schedule for the fall, not in the summer, a joint meeting and request a ZBA so we can sit down and just talk about some of these issues together, because as I fully support downtown, I fully support businesses in town, but I think the variance issue has to be revisited, because sometimes there could be things that just happen, so.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. I think that's certainly a very good point, Casey. If we can tentatively schedule something, let's look in for the month of October. And I think that may be appropriate, given that next month we have our town center regulations that we are going to discuss and most likely act on those regulations. I know at our meetings, we've had some discussion amongst commission members in our workshops that a concern that with these regulations enacted, there still is the ability, as with anything, to go to the ZBA and look for variances. But I think if we're enacting our town center regulations, it would be very beneficial to have a meeting sooner rather than later with the ZBA to let them know very much the concerns that Mr. Fitzsimmons and other commission members had mentioned, as far as with certain variances being granted and the impact of those variances being granted when there was absolutely no reason to grant them. Does that work for everyone? Okay.
Okay, so that, maybe before we go to zoning enforcement, so for October, we're talking about maybe a workshop with ZBA.
Yes, that's correct.
And for hopefully August or September, we're talking about electronic digital
I would think more of
signs.
September rather than August.
I may tack on one other small item to one of those workshops, probably the digital sign workshop, if you're amenable to it, which is actually dealers and repairs licenses and our approval process for those. We need to talk about that.
Okay. Yeah, let's have that with the LED signs rather than ZBA. If ZBA, we can keep that to ZBA.
Yeah, okay.
And if you then could, in the next, next week or two, just send us out some, some dates for those, some suggested dates, or send out one of those surveys, if you
Yeah.
would.
Yep,
That would
okay.
be great. Yeah, the monkey surveys or whatever,
Yeah, the
whatever
doodle-
Mr. Benoit
doodle
calls them.
polls, yes, okay. And then just one other thing to note, you didn't get your receipts tonight because Sandy wasn't here, so you will be having those mailed to you, just so you know what's on the docket. You are receiving your town center zoning regulation change and proposed map change. This is for August. And you also are receiving your application for new development at 5 Research Parkway, which is the formal Bristol-Myers Squibb property. That is currently pending before wetlands, so depending on what happens with wetlands, that may or may not be ready for August. And then your carryovers are the Paradise Hills application and technically, you still have the subdivision for Tully's Road in the pipeline. And then and so to that end, with the town center regulations, I did give you tonight the density. We had talked about me providing you with some examples of existing densities for different developments, mixed-use developments that exist in town and what their densities are. So I did provide that to you. Next month I'll do some visuals too as part of my presentation, but it is pretty interesting. I included, I think some of the ones of note are, generally it's alphabetical by street name, but I put 4 Center and 35 North Colony together because those are under single ownership. So there are a couple outliers. 58 Center Street is on 0.09 acres and it has 11 units. Again, that's completely maxed out end-to-end building, end-to-end property, so its density ends up being 122 units per acre. But generally, I think if you take that one out and you take out the one below it, which is 68 to 72 Center Street, 0.13 acres with 8 units, because they're such outliers, generally the, I'll have to give that to you for next time, but the average was around, I want to say 29 or 30, I think it came to around 29 or 30 units per acre as sort of the general average. The 50 South Main Street project, which is the one approved at the beginning of this year, with the conversion of the former office building, that's at 29 units per acre. Parker Place, it exists at 29 units per acre with the expansion. Now that's entirely residential, and that's outside of your town center area. That's in what will hopefully eventually become part of your TOD area. Was approved. With the approval, it's at 49 units per acre. If I sort of weighted it out to have first floor commercial, it goes down to 40.6 units per acre. So it's actually pretty interesting. The majority of them, I mean, some of them are down in the single digits in units per acre. A lot of them are in the high 20s per acre. So I thought it was a helpful exercise, and we can talk about that more at the next meeting if you want. And then finally, zoning enforcement. I know I always leave it to questions for you. I did want to follow up on 2 things from last time. One is Mr. Seichter had mentioned the dumpster over at the train station, at the Northern Moore train station. That's, as to come full circle to earlier, it's in a parking space. I did talk to DOT about that. They were very responsive, and they're going to meet me out there in the next week or two to come up with a new location, and they said they would work with me and screen it, and they really want this to be successful, and so that should be taken care of. And Mr. Cohen, I know you had asked about the cemetery property, and you had a few questions about that. What I can tell you so far is I spoke with the state archaeologist about the potential for ground penetrating radar. That is something that they will provide if it's of interest. Both the town and the cemetery association would need to request that of them, but that is something they would be available to do in the fall. And I know you asked, I talked to Mrs. Torrey about the log, and she did not have a record of there having been something on there about it. I know there was a question of that maybe it had been on the log, the violation log. Did I misunderstand that?
Yeah, I think I can explain that.
Okay.
Simply the page was missing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Fitzsimmons pointed that out
Okay.
last week.
Okay.
Or last month. It's on there now.
Okay.
And so just, to continue on the cemetery, the violation there was for that raised pathway.
Yep.
And, I was over there not too long ago as well, and it looks like, as part of the application, they weren't supposed to, it looks like they have a drainage pipe coming in right adjacent to that little roadway, and I don't think, what we approved allowed them to divert, run off into, the cemetery. So that, I think, needs to be checked as well.
Okay. I did talk to Public Works and about fixing the driveway itself, because I know it's kind of this cliff. And so they have Mr. McCulley said he was meeting with engineering tomorrow, and they were going to talk about it. They were waiting for the new budget year, so that is on his list of things, so that should be done shortly. And I will also look at the drainage part of it.
And just, yeah, to follow up, for that request, you know, is that something that has to come from, you said the town and the cemetery association, is that something, I don't want to give you more work, that you could request, or that this commission has to request, or, you know, me personally, or, you know, how would?
I'm not sure of the answer to that. I think we would probably need to talk to the, I mean, it's not, that component of it isn't a zoning issue. So I'm not sure,
correct.
yeah, so I'm not sure that the commission would be the appropriate entity to request it, but I will do some follow-up internally and talk to the association if you want.
Yeah, thanks, and I'm happy to, you know,
Yeah.
submit a, you know, letter,
Okay,
so.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. And Mrs. Hand, if you'd please continue.
And that's it, unless there are, I will, as usual, turn it over to you for other questions or comments or what have you about
Mr. Cohen.
violations.
And sorry to elongate the meeting, but I do have one question, I think, which is kind of important. You know, the Tully's Road, you know, 3 applications, the subdivision and the, you know, 2 permits. And, you know, the subdivision's still in progress. What happens with all of the correspondence? What happens with all of the record that, you know, we went through with the 2 public hearings? You know, if they come back with, you know, revised plans, revised applications, I know what the answer is, but
One that I'm not looking forward to. We will have to build the record from the beginning again. So we obviously keep everything. It's all still public record. So we keep everything from the original applications. Those files have been closed out. If new applications are submitted, typically in a situation like this, we take everything from the previous application and resubmit it into the new record, which means everybody gets new copies, and all new copies get submitted into the new record. I think in this case, what I will do is, I mean, typically the reason that I do that is because I want to make sure everything that everybody submitted the first time gets included. So if people think they commented once, it doesn't get left out. So that's what I would do this time too.
thank you.
Kind of thought that would be the answer because Tony Trucking took mine away this morning. Any other comments from commission members? I just have one thing. If you would just pass along to our zoning enforcement officer, Amy Torrey, I think the commission, I know I've had several discussions with her about one particular zoning violation being the Continental Garage and repair, what have you, on Colony Road, and that's been an ongoing issue with respect to not conforming to their site plan. And fortunately, looking at least this weekend as well as today, it appears that they are appears to be in substantial, if not total, conformance with their with their site plan. So if you would just pass on mine and I think probably the commission's appreciation for her staying with that and getting that site to be in compliance, if you would. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn the meeting.
Do we have a second? Second, Mr. Cohan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're adjourned. Have a good evening.